Joining us right now is the New Voice CEO and former presidential candidate himself, Herman Cain. Herman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
First, give me a reaction to Michael Bloomberg's comments just there that you just heard, as well as the most recent comments on stop and frisk, throw them against the wall.
I think he is overgeneralizing because not all black people fall in the category that he has described. Yes, there are some that fall into that category, but the majority of blacks are the absolute opposite of that. And the thing that black people have in common with all people is that they are not stupid. They can think. And so some of his perceptions going into this presidential race are totally different from the whole black community. The whole black community is not one homogeneous group. And that's what statements by Mayor Bloomberg and others, that's where they missed the point.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really important point, and obviously we all know that. But give us your sense of the support for Michael Bloomberg from the black community. And what about the support for President Trump, by the way, of the black community? Because given the fact that you've got the unemployment rate at a record low, I think that's also stoking some interest in that part of the population for the president.
I get a lot of anecdotal feedback from black people because they are not as outspoken as I am in terms of their support for President Trump. Allow me to give you some statistics. In 2018, Rasmussen did a poll that showed that blacks support President Trump at a level of 36%. Wow. Late last year, there was an Emerson poll that came out and said that 34% of blacks support Trump. And then there was another poll. It was the Rasmussen poll in 2017, excuse me, then early in 2018, and then a Gallup poll came out also late last year. It said it was also 34%. Three independent polls are basically indicating that at least a third of black voters are in fact supporting President Trump. But the narrative on the left and the narrative from the Democrats, they want you to believe that President Trump is struggling in the single digits. They even reported that that was what it was after the last election. I don't believe that number, because when people come out and you do exit interviews, they don't always tell the truth. If they're in a black neighborhood, coming from a black precinct, and somebody standing there with a clipboard or a microphone in their face, they may not be totally honest. I happen to believe those three polls, which are well documented.
Yeah.
Herman, Kelly Torrance here. You know, I think you made a great point when you said that black people are not a homogenous group. And it does seem, though, doesn't it, that Democrats think of them that way. And they also think that they're more interested in identity politics and anger than in opportunity. Do you think that a Republican message might be getting through to a lot of people who have been Democrats for many years?
Absolutely. The Republican message, the conservative message is getting through. And the reason that the Democrats play identity politics is because they are trying to intimidate black people to stay on the Democrat plantation. But those three polls that I cited for you indicate that blacks are not staying on the Democrat plantation. Many of them are like me. They left the Democrat plantation and they're not going back.
Wow.
I appreciate the results. I appreciate the results that this president and his administration are generating. Our challenge as conservatives and supporters of Trump is to get that message out. Not just one statistic, but all of the amazing results that have been achieved in the last 3 years. And those three polls indicate that in fact, a lot of black people are indeed appreciating results and not just the perception.
Yeah, that's going to be important going into South Carolina as well, Tom.
Yeah, Herman, it's Tom Bevan. I'm going to ask you to put on your political consultant hat here. One of the questions in the Democratic primary right now is whether black voters are going to stick with Joe Biden or whether they're going to migrate to another candidate in the field. What's your take on black support for Joe Biden? Is it just this sort of warm and fuzzy feelings about Barack Obama, his association with Obama, or is it really solid and going to stick with him, do you think?
I think the people that were or are supporting Joe Biden are going to go in three directions. I don't know in what amounts. First, they may go to Mayor Bloomberg because he's a billionaire. Secondly, they may stay with Joe Biden because of his past association with Obama. But more importantly, I believe most of them that are leaving Joe Biden are going to support Republicans and support Donald Trump. Why? Because they are not buying this narrative, this negative narrative about perception, about the results don't mean anything. They're just trying to downplay this economy rather than allow people to learn the truth.
Yeah,
so I think a
funny.
large percentage of them.
Yeah. Because, you know, you can't even get them to admit that the economy is going well. And then you got this war of words on Twitter between the president and former President Barack Obama over the booming economy. So Obama tweets this out yesterday, Herman. 11 years ago today, near the bottom of the worst recession in generations, I signed the Recovery Act, paving the way for more than a decade of economic growth and the longest streak of job creation in American history. So he's taking credit for it. And then President Trump fires back writing this. Did you hear the latest con job? President Obama is now trying to take credit for the economic boom taking place under the Trump administration. We had the weakest recovery since the Great Depression, despite zero Fed rates and massive quantitative easing. Now, best job numbers ever. Had to rebuild our military, which was totally depleted. Fed rate up, taxes and regulations way down. If Dems won in 2016, the USA would be in economic depression, question mark, he writes, and military trouble right now. The best is yet to come. Keep America great. Herman.
Well, let's start with that recovery from the recession that Obama inherited. It didn't grow as much as previous recessions when they were able to get in as president.
Yeah, it was the weakest recovery we've ever seen.
It's the weakest recovery we have ever seen. Now, here's some things that the Obama administration didn't do. One, they didn't roll back they didn't decrease taxes. Two, they didn't roll back regulations. They did just the opposite. Three, instead of opening up energy exploration, the Obama administration shut down energy exploration. Four, they didn't even touch prison reform.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on. And so you cannot take credit for things that you did not do.
Yeah.
And that's what he is trying to allude to. He didn't do any of those things. The things that President Trump and this administration did are the things that have propelled this economy, not the economy that President Trump inherited.
Yeah, and don't forget when he said, when he said, oh, what does he have, a magic wand? He was questioning the president promising all this job creation, Les.
Yeah. So, Mr. Cain,
Yes.
question for you. Bloomberg's under
Yes.
a lot of pressure for things he said and did in the past. Do you think his apology tour is working with black voters?
Some, but not all. And it depends upon how much the media pushes his apology from some of the things he said in the past. And as I indicated earlier, some people are going to simply go with the conservative, with supporting Donald Trump, simply because it's the facts that matters and the results. They're not going to buy this negative narrative. So I believe that some people are going to accept the apology from some of the things he said in the past, but some people simply are not going to accept it.
All right, we'll keep watching this. Herman, it's great to get your insights this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Good to see you again. The Herman Cain joining us there.